When people come into my office, they don't usually use these words, this phrase, but basically what they're coming in and saying is, what I've always been doing has always worked, but it's no longer working. And I don't know what to do, right? Like our patterns work pretty well for a while. They work until they don't. They work until those very patterns get so strong that they kind of start creating issues and derail us.
Welcome to the In-Between, a space for anyone navigating from the familiar to the unknown. Whether you're facing a personal, professional, or spiritual disruption, these conversations are here to help guide you through the questions, uncertainties, and opportunities that come with change. Hear from leaders, thinkers, and storytellers who found their way forward, and learn how you can too. No matter where you're starting, you don't have to navigate this alone. Today, I'm sitting down with Michael Shahan, licensed therapist, IFS practitioner, and Enneagram specialist. Through his therapy practice and teaching, he helps people understand their inner world with more kindness and clarity. Michael, I'm really grateful to have this conversation. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course. I'm grateful that you asked.
Absolutely. So could you catch us up to speed? Could you share a little bit of your story? What made you particularly interested in the Enneagram?
Yeah, sure. So I finished grad school to be a licensed marriage and family therapist in 2017. And it was quickly after that I was working with a couple. And they had very, very difficult time communicating, understanding each other, having grace for each other. It was a very difficult marriage at that point in time. And I didn't even suggest it, but they came back one day saying something about how they heard about this Enneagram thing and typed themselves and listened to a podcast that talked about their specific numbers. And it floored them. I remember one of them saying, my jaw dropped to the floor hearing this. I had no idea that he did this because X or whatever. And just them understanding each other's numbers really increased their communication and their understanding and their compassion for each other. And I just remember thinking like, wow, this Enneagram thing is doing my work for me. Like this is kind of what I'm doing. So if it's going to help, like, why not utilize it? Why not look into this more? And it was such an impactful session, realizing how something like the Enneagram can really help people communicate, help people understand each other and their partner. And the rest was history. After that, I just dove into podcasts and books and trainings and things like that. And ever since then, I've just more and more been utilizing the Enneagram in my practice because why not use something that really helps me in the job that I'm already doing in lots of different ways? I think it's basically the short version, but yeah, I remember it blowing me away, seeing in person what it was doing to people and how it was helping people.
I came across the Enneagram 2017, 2018, sometime around like when it was kind of getting a resurgence.
Sure.
And
Yep.
I was hearing all the podcasts I was listening to, it just kept coming up, and I was kind of like into assessments already, and I had never found language that so insightfully described what it felt like to be me.
Yeah, sure.
I was listening to some podcasts of different panelists. It might have been the early days of Ian Cron's podcast,
Sure.
but he was hosting these group conversations of different panelists of type 3s or type 5s, and you'd be hearing like 3 or 4 of the same type kind of sharing from their experience. And I was in the gym listening to a group of panelists who were type 5s talk about what it was like to be their type. And I was jump roping like 30-40 minutes into my workout, and I was jump roping at this point, and I had tears start to stream down my face because I'd never heard someone describe so accurately what it felt like to be me. And so I totally get that. I kind of dove into the Enneagram after that. What were you doing before 2017?
I had just finished grad school, and I had heard about the Enneagram a little bit. But before then I was doing, before I came to Kansas City for grad school, I was working with a community-based mental health center with kids. I did that a couple years after college, and then heard about the program, grad school program for Friends University in Kansas City, and then moved here about 2015, and that's when I've been in. As far as being a therapist goes, I had a moment early in high school, like sophomore, junior year of high school, when I realized I wanted to be a therapist. And so it was pretty cool having such a passion for that early on. But yeah, and it's just a lot of life was leading up to starting grad school and working toward that. So yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to do this work. I've always wanted to help people be the best versions of themselves and get unstuck from the patterns that don't work for them anymore. Yeah, it's something I've been passionate about for a long time.
Can you say more about that moment? Like what was that moment?
Yeah, I was reading a book called Blue Like Jazz.
Okay.
Donald Miller, is that what it is?
Yes.
Is that the author?
Yep.
Yeah, and in that book, he was just kind of his memoirs about certain things in life, and he was talking about how he was having all these failed relationships and having difficult time keeping them, and then he went to a therapist of some sort that helped him recognize kind of his own patterns with love and his difficulty accepting it, and learning that and hearing about that really shifted how he did relationships. And I remember like thinking, I don't know what that is, but that's what I want to do. I want to help people learn about themselves so that they can be the best version of themselves. Yeah, it was such a cool moment of like, I don't know what that looks like or how that's going to look, but I want to do that moving forward.
Hey friends, I want to pause just for a moment. If you're navigating the complex and emotional process of leaving a mission-driven role, whether that's been ministry, nonprofit work, or any purpose-driven career, you're not just looking for a new job. You're wrestling with things like the personal, professional, and spiritual dynamics that come with all of this. Maybe you're asking things like, who am I outside of this role? What skills do I even have that can translate into the future? Will I ever find work that feels meaningful again? If this is resonating, download Finding Your Way to Flourishing. It's a free guide that I've put together for mission-driven leaders who find themselves in the midst of transition. This isn't just another guide, it's a thoughtfully crafted resource that's designed to help you begin processing your identity beyond the role that you're leaving. It can help you pinpoint which skills you can confidently bring into your new and next role. And it'll help you lean into your faith and find peace during the midst of this uncertainty. Not overwhelming, it's not complicated. It's just the first step to getting some clarity and moving forward. You don't have to figure this all out alone, and I'd love to walk this journey with you. This guide is completely free, and you can grab your copy today by clicking the link in the description or in the show notes. Let's start making some sense of this transition together. Okay, now back to the conversation.
Any idea why? Like, why did that resonate so deeply or profoundly with you?
That's a great question. I mean, I can get real Enneagram nerdy with an answer to that if you want.
Yeah, answer as much as you'd like.
Yeah, sure. I think it comes from my self-preservation 6 tendencies. The self-preservation subtype of 6 is basically the most fear-based subtype out of all 27 subtypes, all 9 types. And what the strategy for like survival, the ego strategy of the self-preservation 6 is to have safe people around them and have people to self-preservation 6 people tend to be warm and kind and friendly to kind of attract people who can keep them safe and help me survive kind of under the surface. That's what's going on. And I think it's related to this, like this very unconscious kind of belief or drive of my ego to say, if I can help people be the best versions of themselves, I can the world will be a safer place, if that makes sense. I think it definitely has something to do with that. And I don't think that's a problem. I think everything we do comes from our ego motivations in a lot of ways. I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. I think if our ego motivations take control of us and we're nothing but reactive to them, then that is when it becomes an issue. But yeah, I don't think that's an issue. I don't think that's like a quote bad thing at all to be motivated by that. Especially as I look back, it makes a lot of sense. I've always, I was a camp counselor for years back in high school and college. I just really wanted to pour into people and help people in all sorts of ways. It's always been just a big drive for me.
Yeah. How do you think over the years? I mean, I think there's a lot of people in their younger years, they get this idea or they feel this sense of push or pull or call towards something. How did you see that continue to show up in your life, like until you've kind of come to this point where you're actually doing the thing that that you felt like residing in you? Like, was that something you had to fight for? Did you find that you were just kind of naturally pulled into it? Like, what did that look like for you?
I think probably the most difficult process was to like how to do that, right? I had this idea of here's what I kind of want to do for people, but what does that look like? What context can I do that in? So when I went to college, I actually went to Manhattan Christian College in Manhattan, Kansas. And I did a degree in family studies with a pre-counseling emphasis, but also took several like pastoral counseling classes because I figured in that point in time, I didn't know whether I wanted to be a pastor because I was super involved with the youth group growing up and everything. And I loved that. And being a pastor definitely has elements of that, right? It has elements of pouring into people's lives and helping them be the best versions of themselves. And so I think just through college, taking some classes around like what it's like to be a pastor and what that entails, and even doing some preaching in college to little churches around that didn't have pastors, experimenting with that, and also experimenting with just, especially my senior year of college, when we did a lot of the actual like counseling classes and realizing that the first time I did like a live therapy session for like my final senior year with a friend that I worked with, man, I just felt my whole body light up. There was like this white hot energy in my chest that felt so, I don't know. It's just like, I want to do this for a very long time. I think it just kind of took me a while to figure out which one of those that I wanted to do. And then after college, it took me a little bit to find out kind of practically, I guess, what degree I needed, what kind of qualifications I needed. And that took a couple years after college I had a baby, got married, had a baby. And so I just kind of stayed and worked at that mental health center until I was able to get to a grad school program. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. When you're working with people who, you know, maybe on the outside, it seems like they're doing okay, but they are maybe like falling apart on the inside or unraveling. Like, is there an element of taking them back to a certain point? Like, where do you start in those types of instances?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of people, I think one of the first things ever is even recognizing that like helping people recognize just how much what they're doing isn't working, like kind of unraveling on the inside. Our defenses can be so strong that sometimes we don't even know. We can be so distracted with other things or other goals or whatever that may be that we don't even recognize that we're falling apart on the inside. And sometimes it takes a huge life event to happen. When people come into my office, they don't usually use this phrase, but basically what they're coming in and saying is, what I've always been doing has always worked, but it's no longer working. And I don't know what to do, right? Like our patterns work pretty well for a while. They work until they don't. They work until those very patterns get so strong that they kind of start creating issues and derail us. So I think one of the first things that I do with people is there's a need to recognize just how what you're doing isn't working for you. And sometimes that's a difficult process. But people usually come in my office ready to see it, or starting to see it at least. Because I think if we don't realize what we're doing, what isn't working for us, then we aren't going to be motivated to do anything else. Our ego patterns work until they don't anymore, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I just had a conversation with someone last night. You know, I'm 43. I think he's 42, 43, and he's going through some, you know, just, I wouldn't say it's a dark night of the soul type thing, but he's definitely questioning. And I'm like, you know, there is this really real aspect of midlife. You know, they say it can hit between like 38, 45. And that first half, the tools and the structures that you've built have helped you get to a certain point. Yes. And then at some point they just stop working. Yeah. And you realize, you know what, if I'm going to go to where I want to go, be who I want to be, leave the type of legacy or impact that I want to leave, like I have to equip myself with new tools and maybe some new structures and frameworks. So I think what you said makes perfect sense.
I think it's just, so I think it can be a difficult process to really see, oh, this is what I've been doing and here's why it's not working and here's where it's coming from. I just think that can be quite the shock to people because our ego patterns want to keep doing what they're doing without us being aware of them. They want to just like keep chugging along. So when we start being aware of them, it can be very uncomfortable experience. Lots of shame can come up, lots of humiliation feelings like, oh, this is what I'm doing. This is my motivation. This is what I've been doing the whole time. And that just can be a really difficult process that I think is really, really important to always, as best as possible, be met with compassion and gentleness and forgiveness for yourself.
Would that be related to the parts work at all? Or how could you say more about that? How would you explain that? And what is that and why it matters?
Parts work. Yeah. That's a great question. Parts work comes from, is the language that comes from a therapy theory called internal family systems, which basically the idea at the core is that humans aren't like onions. It's not like you peel enough layers and then we'll get to our core and our one single core. It's actually not like that. How we are actually built, how our personality is built, is we're more like a head of garlic with multiple cloves all making one, right? We don't have one single piece to us. We have multiple parts to us. Like an example of, I really want to go to sleep right now because I need rest, but I also want to hang out with friends, but I also want to read this book, right? There's multiple parts of us wanting different things. And the idea around internal family systems is when there's been difficult life difficulties, especially heavy trauma, some of those parts get really, really big. They get really big and they sort of take over. And in an effort to protect us, they almost get stuck looking outward, protecting us, and not realizing that we as a whole can handle what life is throwing at us. And so these really big defense mechanisms can come from these parts of us that are wanting us to do very specific things, wanting us to be safe from very specific things. And I just love the language of parts. Like when I work with families, to say to a kid, your mom is angry at you, hits very different than there is a part of your mom that's angry at you, right? It's not your whole being, it's not every part of you that's frustrated with somebody or a whole part of somebody that's angry with you or upset with you or whatever. It's different parts of us. And every one of these parts have very different needs and very different desires. And so, even the language that I use with clients, I'll say something like, it sounds like a part of you really wants blank, but another part of you wants this. And so the idea around internal family systems is that none of the parts themselves are inherently bad. It's the dysfunction between those parts that creates issues in our lives, if that makes sense. Like it's not, so it's called internal family systems because that the theory kind of imagines our parts as like a dysfunctional family inside of us, where one does this, then the other one reacts this way, and then you shove this one down. And so to really meet all those parts and understand what makes you up, and then learning to work with those better so that one doesn't have to get really loud, or so that there's not this dysfunction happening internally is basically the goal of internal family systems.
There's obviously a lot of work that would go into this, but like if there's one part that is particularly dominant, how do you begin to recognize what that is or how that's showing up? And are there a couple questions that help you to like realize or see that?
That's a great question. So those really big parts, sometimes they're called like pseudo self parts, because these parts get so big that we think that's all we are, or that's who we are. But the idea around IFS is that there are all these parts, but there's also a self, like a capital S self, or what some people might call the image of God in us, or what some people might call our soul or our essence. There's a part of us that doesn't get to show up because these parts are so active, or we think we are those parts, and we don't recognize that there is a self underneath there that is curious and kind and gentle and soft and powerful and able to heal yourself with that self. So these parts get really big and we can kind of lose sight of ourself. But yeah, your question was around how do we begin to kind of get to know those parts, basically? How do we work with them?
Basically, like I think I started out with like, if there is a more dominant part that is kind of running the show, like how do you recognize that or become aware of that?
Yeah, it's a lot of it starts, how I use this at least, with a lot of body sensations. I'll be working with a client and they'll talk about where they feel a certain emotion or a certain bit of shame or anger or fear, where that shows up. And sometimes we can access those parts through body sensations. But one of the best things to do to ask yourself and to really find out about these parts is if there's a part of you that you don't like, or a piece of your personality, and what I do with clients is have them visualize removing that part from them and plopping it on the couch next to them. And then the most important question is, what is your relationship to that part of you? So like, as in, some people might say, I want it gone, or I hate it, or I'm embarrassed about this part of me, or I don't like this part of me. And that reaction itself is usually a really big part of you. Like, does that make sense? So there's the part of you that you're talking about, and then your relationship to that part. If it's anything but love, compassion, acceptance, then it is another part showing up. And so like, that question of how do you, so not tell me about that part, or tell me about this part of it you don't like, but it's what is your relationship to that part? Because that's when it gets to that internal family system stuff, where you're starting to kind of recognize how you react to one part, and then how that part reacts back to you, right? Like, I don't like this part, I'm going to get rid of it. And that part's like, yeah, right, you're not going to get rid of me, you need me. And so I'm going to flare up even more. And so it's just a very interactive kind of thing in sessions with clients, like talking to the parts as if they're an actual thing inside of you, because they kind of are. And just even this whole idea of healing around internal family systems is that, right, none of these parts are bad. And these parts that we usually tend to not like and want to get rid of, those are actually the parts that we need to be the most curious about. Those parts have a lot to teach us and a lot to tell us, and we have a lot to learn from those parts. And when we can really listen to those parts, then there's a lot of softening that happens. I like to compare it to like a couple, a husband and a wife. Let's say this is stereotypical husband and wife, where the husband says, well, quit nagging me. And the wife says, well, if you could pull your weight, then I quit nagging you, right? This like very stereotypical interaction. If that's in my office, that's not going to go anywhere. What really shifts things is to say, okay, so tell me, like the quote nagging wife, tell me what it's like when your partner isn't doing things. Like, well, I feel scared, I feel terrified. Instead of like blaming and pointing the finger, when people can really learn where the other person is coming from and approach that with curiosity, there's so much softening that happens. There's like oh, wow, I didn't know you were that afraid. Wow, I didn't realize that that's how that was hitting you. I'm sorry. And there's this natural, when we can really see it and go toward it and share it vulnerably, there's a natural softening. And the same happens with our parts. When we can really be with and be curious about these parts of us, especially the parts that we don't like. There's a lot of softening that can happen, and those parts begin to kind of have less say in your personality, right? It's so the goal of your parts are like, I love this example. Your parts are like kids. You don't want them in your driving. You don't want them driving, and you don't want to shove them in the trunk either, right? You want them in the car with you, giving you feedback, because we need our parts. But if the part is driving, taking over, then it starts to create issues.
I love that, because it's really helping individuals like operate with agency.
Yes,
like
yes, absolutely.
You're determining, and you're deciding, and you get to interact like and have a say, because sometimes you feel powerless. Like you actually get to have a say in how these parts are.
And that powerless might even be a part, right? Like there's a part of me that leaves me feeling powerless, and there's like using that as just an aside, because that can be a big part in people. Some people tend to just shut down and feel powerless if things aren't going their way. And that part, all of our parts at one point in time helped us with something. And so to share these parts and appreciation of, thank you for keeping me safe. I was a kid and I had nobody else to teach me what to do, and you took over for me. And I'm sorry that you had to do that so early, but thank you for protecting me. Thank you for keeping me safe. Thank you for keeping me known and loved and making me feel better. And so approaching parts like that can just be so, oh man, it can shift so much. And I love the example of in Richard Schwartz's book. Richard Schwartz is the guy who basically created this internal family systems theory. In one of his books, he actually compares this idea of internal family systems to what Jesus was doing on the earth. So that culture at that time was saying, these, and these are the bad people, right? If we could get rid of you, society would be better. So, and then Jesus comes in and said, actually, those are the people I'm going to love. Those are the good people I'm going to deal with, the sinners, the tax collectors, the prostitutes. You think that they're the problem and try to get rid of them in the system, but that's not actually working. What really we need to shift this entire system is to be with those people, to love those people, to be curious where those people are coming from. And that big systemic goal that Jesus was doing very much mirrors our own kind of internal landscape and how to work with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Would you say say there's a part that feels powerless? You're creating empathy and understanding and all of those things for that part of you. In that process, are you helping that powerless part to begin to operate in a more healthy way? Or is it just like that powerlessness part is always there and you're just more like understanding and empathetic towards yourself, realizing that it's always there? Like, what's the goal in that?
Yeah, it's actually both of those. It's actually both of those things. It's like learning about if you're stuck with pretty difficult roommates, like imagining your parts like roommates. It's like, oh, well, they're going to be with me for a long time. So how do I get along with these better versus trying to get rid of them, if that makes sense. So I think you're sort of, you said, is it blank? You said, I forgot what you said, or blank. I think it's both. It's in understanding and accepting and having compassion for our parts that allow those parts to not be so loud. Because the idea is that these parts really help us early on, right? Like if we had a very domineering parent or something, maybe let's say that as an example, this powerless part maybe kept me safe because instead of bucking up and fighting to this person, I stayed safe by pulling back and being powerless and giving up my power, right? Which kept them safe at one point in time. But if you don't work through those traumas, those parts are going to stay stuck, kind of looking outward, trying to protect us when we don't need that anymore. There's a bigger self. We're an adult now, right? We have more wisdom. We have more capability, and to learn to recognize and see that and share that with that part can really help it soften and say, okay, I guess I don't have to work as hard anymore as I used to.
Yeah. Just to connect it kind of to what took us down this path is that's where we find ourselves later on in life, where it's like, okay, these things have worked up to a certain point, but obviously at this point, for whatever reason, it is no longer working.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for going there.
Yeah, sure.
I really enjoyed that. I'm also curious, do you see, I love when with multiple assessments and tools and frameworks, you're able to layer the insight and the nuance that those different tools can provide. Do you see a layering with the Enneagram and IFS? Are there certain ways that you see those things working together?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started utilizing IFS and talking with people about these major parts, some of the biggest parts in each one was basically their Enneagram number, right? This biggest part that was really running the show was a collection of parts or a big part that very much represents that Enneagram number. So even looking at our Enneagram number as just a part that's really out of whack, and even looking at the lines of growth and development, right? The sort of lines of integration, disintegration as parts of you that you don't have a great relationship with, that you usually don't want to be with, that you don't like, that you kind of want to get rid of. Those usually lay across those lines. And those are actually the very things that we kind of need to absorb and let them know that they are part of us and that we are part of them. So yeah, I think the layering of that, there's somebody on Instagram a while back who combined the Enneagram and IFS, and I actually created a course a couple of years ago to teach therapists how to use the Enneagram in their practice. And in the last week of that course, the last module, we talk about the interlap between internal and family systems and the Enneagram. So yeah, that's definitely something that's overlapped and utilized by more and more people these days, from what I've seen at least.
So that's a course that you offer?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I don't know when this podcast is going to come out, but I have my when is it? My next course. It's a mini one. It's usually a 6-week course, but I'm shortening it a little bit to a 3-week thing. This November 4th, 11th, and the 18th, the 2-hour sessions each night. If you're interested, I don't know if you want to give your listeners that information, but it's something I love doing, starting from the ground up, really exploring what the Enneagram means and the 3 centers and how that builds us into who we are, and how each Enneagram number tends to show up in therapy. And I've had therapists, social workers, pastors, nurses, all sorts of helping professionals in this course. Yeah, it's called your Enneagram in Practice is what my course is called.
Okay. And that's what's your website?
michaelshahan.com.
Okay.
Yep,
cool.
it was awesome. My just direct name. It wasn't taken. I loved it.
that is perfect when it works out like that. Like I've tried to get evandoyle.com for a long time, and like someone else has it. I'm like, it seems like not that common of a name, but there's actually more Evan Doyles out there than you think.
Bummer.
But, yeah. So I normally settle for like it's Evan Doyle or the Evan Doyle.
Throw in something like that. Yeah.
So I know we just said a lot about this, but for those who maybe feel ashamed, maybe there's certain parts or aspects of their type or just things that they're realizing like, this isn't working for me anymore, but they feel frozen. Maybe they feel stuck. They feel ashamed. How do they begin to move from judgment to curiosity?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a great question. So much of just what I do with people. Man, that's I think awareness has to come before that, to really see clearly these parts of us, which is where the Enneagram comes in, really allowing us to see these parts of us clearly. And then, just all we've talked about, just that even a stance of, maybe something practical is, instead of, when I tell people a lot who come and see me, I say, okay, the goal is not to change these patterns at all for quite a while. The only goal right now is to recognize what they are and how they're interacting with you and where they come out, period. Because if we try to stop our patterns or change them, we're going to come at it with the same energy that keeps us there, and it doesn't really go anywhere. So if like a great example I like to use is, I don't know if you're familiar with what an Enneagram 1 is. They're very self-critical, they perfectionists, they need to do things the right way. They kind of see themselves as bad and they want to be good. So if an Enneagram 1 comes along, finds out about the Enneagram, and they sort of come at it with, oh, wow, I'm bad, I'm not good. Let me use the Enneagram to make sure I'm good, to make me better. That's the same exact energy that keeps them stuck in their oneness trying to get out. So it just doesn't work. Wow. And so that's why I always encourage so much just noticing. Notice it. Notice. Note what's happening. Note when you get anxious, and note when you get angry, or whatever your type structure struggles with. Just really noticing that and recognizing it for what it is and being curious about it. And very often that leads automatically to shifting our relationships with these part of us, rather than trying to force it to be different.
I'm just thinking back to my own life, like 2017, 2016, I was probably 35, 36, something like that. And there was just certain brick walls that I kept hitting. I'm like, gosh, I don't want to do this anymore. That's kind of when I started going down this path and learning about the Enneagram. And so you just realize or know, okay, I don't like this. I want something to change. And then you're able to begin becoming aware in those moments of, oh, I'm feeling this, I'm experiencing this, I'm doing this. You're just paying attention more.
Yes.
And so are you saying that awareness alone, because it's something that we're already wanting to change, but we just haven't been able to put words to maybe what those things are at that point? I'm having trouble connecting the dots between the awareness and the actual change, if that makes sense.
Sure. And I think it could be a very counterintuitive kind of idea that not trying to change and simply being aware can actually create more change. Carl Rogers, it was a famous psychotherapist from like the 50s, 60s. I don't know exactly when that was. He has a famous quote that he says, something about the paradox is this: when you fully accept who you are, then you can change it. But something to that extent. I don't know the exact quote, but this idea that until we fully accept, till we have a full awareness and acceptance of who we are and what we're doing, we really can't change anything. Because otherwise we just sort of get stuck in the same kind of energy that keeps us there in the first place. And so I think that's very fair that you're having trouble connecting those, because it feels like a very counterintuitive move. Because so much of our ego wants to say, no, this needs to be better, do this differently, I need to achieve this, and if I can just do X, then I'll be okay. It's all such future oriented thoughts, right? If I could just be better, if I could do this and do this or do this, then I'd be better. Then I can be okay. But the reality is, in the present moment as is, we are okay. It's our parts and it's our patterns that kind of tell us, you have to do this and you have to do this because you won't be okay if you don't do those things. And so recognizing that you are okay now and recognizing how those parts are trying to sort of convince you to do something different that's always in the future or in the past, can really bring your awareness to the present moment, and even helps us see like why we have those parts or where they're coming from. Like if I don't like to do X in life, every time like I have this thing that I do and I don't like doing it, usually when we approach it with curiosity, we can start to realize that that thing usually isn't the problem. That thing is usually our attempted solution to the problem. Does that make sense? Like drinking. I'm like people who struggle with alcoholism. Alcoholism is not the problem. Alcohol is something they're using to help something else that they don't know how to help, if that makes sense. If you never learn how to regulate your emotions or how to be grounded and be centered, you never were given tools to do that, then you're going to reach for anything that can make you feel better in the moment because you don't know how to do it differently. And so bringing awareness to those patterns doesn't just show us the patterns and what they're doing. It also shows it can also show us why we're doing that, right? Like what this part is trying to protect us from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, because, the timing of this is so interesting. So I was in a conversation yesterday with a coach, and so I'm a type 5 on the Enneagram, and I've always associated, and even other assessments, like a love of learning always shows up.
Sure.
But there's also this aspect of like fear and that type of emotion. And they posed the question to me, like, do you think that your curiosity is driven by a pure love of learning, or is it driven by a need to protect yourself in the moment? And that was basically the essence of what she was asking, and that really blew my mind in that moment. It was a paradigm shift for how I look at curiosity, like in my own life. And so to me, that is lending to the point that you were just making. Like, there are things that we might do, but and at the end of that conversation, one of the things she asked is like, what does effectiveness look like for you? And to me, what effectiveness is going to look like in the future in that particular area of my life is being aware, or at least trying to be aware in that moment of what is this moment of curiosity actually being motivated by.
Yes, exactly.
Is it being motivated by fear and a need to feel like I have whatever it is that I need to have to protect myself, or is it actually being motivated by a pure curiosity to explore and to learn and to just venture into new territory? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I can speak to that a little bit, if like through the lens of the Enneagram, because I think what she's saying is like this need for knowledge to protect yourself is very Enneagram 5, right? They're in that kind of that head triad, needing a sense of certainty and needing a sense of security, and 5s find that internally. Right. I need to go in, I need to learn about things so that when life hits me or when X happens, I'll be prepared and I'll be ready to go, and I'll know what I'm doing. I'll be competent, and that makes me feel safer. But there's an idea called a term for the Enneagram called the essential qualities. It's this thing that the idea that we are born with access to this essential quality, and each number is born with access to something slightly different. And so I'd love to use the 5 as an example. The 5 essential quality is that of knowing. So kind of knowing what's true, knowing what isn't, the ability to change your mind and shift with what you learn, and this desire to seek the truth. And so there's this sort of inherent connection to that theoretically when we're born. But as we grow up and start developing our ego, we lose connection with that. And the theory is that so much of the fixation of our type, what we're doing, the learning of a 5, the obsessive learning, is an attempt to get back to that sense of knowing that almost feels like this innate sense of losing it, if that makes sense. Like I had it once, almost like a felt sense of it, but I don't have it now. How do I get to that? And the fixation of the 5, the intense learning and the wanting to find out new things and the curiosity can also be seen as an attempt to find your way back to knowing. But any of those ego strategies are just trying to force something. And the reality is, your knowing is already in you. What you need is presence in this moment, and connecting to your breath and connecting to your body and being able to find it there versus through these things that we do with our numbers. And that's actually related to something that else I created. I created a 9-part meditation series based on some of Russ Hutson's and my favorite Enneagram teacher's work. And I have that on my website as well. It's a short meditation for each number that gets you in touch with that essence that each number is connected to. And then a short teaching after that about how the lack of that essence leads to the type patterns of each number. And I just, through that, I also teach how to meditate through the head, heart, and the body, and how to bring presence to all of those throughout the thing. That's one of my favorite things that I've created. But yeah, that's almost just a different kind of look at why we do what we do. There's an attempt to want to get back to where we were, which is also very Old Testament as well, right? Like things used to be great, things used to be paradise, and there was presence, and then we lost it, and spending my whole life trying to get back there in my own ways that doesn't actually work. I think there's lots of parallels there with those stories.
Yeah. I've got a couple more questions for you, if that's all right.
Yeah, please.
I'm curious, with you building your own practice, your own business, you've got this entrepreneurial side to you. What does that look like for you also as like a type 6, desiring safety and also relating to that fear aspect? What does that look like for you to like wrestle with that and actually like push through it in some ways?
Oof, that's a great question. That's also a very timely question, just because, as like lately, my business is not doing as well as it has been. And so, man, there's this constant, I'm not doing enough. What should I be doing? Where is this going to get any better? Which actually in my 6ness can actually lead me to kind of shutting my ears and eyes and not wanting to do anything. The fear can become so overwhelming that things aren't working, that I can find myself shutting down and wanting to ignore it and wanting to distract myself, which actually just makes it worse. And so lately what I've been doing, we're trying to do, is really just bringing a lot of awareness to that fear and noticing how it affects me and noticing how it makes me want to shut down and noticing how I'll look at my to-do list and it's really big. Also just my ADHD doesn't help. The lack of executive functioning doesn't help with this too, but the to-do list gets so big. I just want to, no, like I don't want to do these. I'd rather just like, I don't know, play a game on my phone or something completely different, and just recognizing what that fear feels like and when it's coming in me and when it's in me and when it's sort of leading me to try to ignore things and just kind of plug my ears until it gets better. Recognizing that and bringing presence to that fear really lets me say, you know what, this fear is not actually helpful right now. Thank you for helping me sometimes. And sometimes this fear and this anxiety can be really great and can really help me with things. But right now, you're actually making it worse. So I don't need that right now. Okay. Does that almost even like a practical example of what we've been talking about earlier?
Totally.
But through the 6 lens.
Yeah. Yeah. In the earlier days, like obviously maybe you've learned to manage that fear and that anxiety better. In the earlier days, like, was it pretty much the same as it is now, or was it more intensified? Was it strong? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, I was actually very, very unaware of my fear for a long time. I actually mistyped as an Enneagram 9 for about 6 or 7 years, interestingly enough. I had so convinced myself that I wasn't a scared person, that I was just go with the flow. And I think life just like was working for me then. I got really lucky, not just lucky, right? I worked really hard, obviously, but things just went well. And I never really had to deal with that anxiety. It was able to be pushed aside and things were going well despite that. But ever since learning about just how much anxiety I hold and just how often I'm anxious and worried about things has been a real trip. And actually really uncomfortable for a while to really see the truth of that, see just how much anxiety I was operating out of. And a lot of shame came up and a lot of beliefs about my own weakness and how I'm right, just like not good enough and all these things, which really doesn't help any of this being stuck in those ways. And so, early on, I think it was, I don't know. Life was going well enough that I didn't need to really worry that much. I had a lot of structure in my life that I don't have now, just like family wise, that was keeping things more put together. I think early on, I really didn't have to. It was so hidden that I wasn't noticing it, and I'm kind of going well enough that I didn't really need to be as concerned with it as I have been the last like 2 years, especially ever since I recognized that I've been mistyped for so long.
So I would imagine discovering or coming to the realization that you mistyped, I would imagine be like two dynamics going on. Like one, how could I miss this?
Exactly.
Maybe.
Yes.
But then also at the same time, there's a real relief for this is really making a lot of things make sense. Maybe.
Yes.
Like, did you experience that tension?
100%. You nailed it. Yes. Yeah. There was this huge like, oh man, so much of my job is teaching the Enneagram, and apparently I know nothing about it. And I went so black and white, and all these people are going to think I've been like, so many worries about what that meant for myself, for my own sense of identity. But there was very much this like, oh no, I've been wrong the whole time, and maybe I don't know anything, kind of like freak out. But there's also this unlocking of so many parts of myself that I had no idea were there. So much clarity with sort of the underlying reasons for what I'm doing and how often I'm doing them and why I'm doing them. Yeah, the clarity is unbelievable. Just how much that shift when I really settled on like the more accurate lens that really describes me, man. It's been huge. It's been huge. Very uncomfortable, but very big and important.
I'm sure too, people very much appreciate like the transparency and like.
That's not what I thought at first. I thought everyone's going to hate me and everyone's going to be this like what's the word? Disenfranchised with the whole Enneagram system. And well, if this guy was wrong, then I don't care about any of this. And it was actually not a single one of those things were ever told to me. Wow. It was all a lot of people saying like, we appreciate your transparency. Thank you for your courage and your bravery. Just totally like my Enneagram 6 self never expected those kinds of things to come from this. But I've been told by multiple people how impactful that was just for my honesty and the courage that took. So that was, I think you're spot on with that. There's, if anybody's interested in like kind of what that revelation looked like, on my Instagram, I have it pinned, an Instagram live that I did when I fully recognized that I was a 6. And I was just like, all right, ask questions. Let's talk about mistyping and what this looked like for me. So if anybody wants to dive in that more directly, that's the first post pinned on my Instagram page.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Okay. Last question. What does flourishing look like to you nowadays?
That's a really great question. What does flourishing look like for me nowadays? I think flourishing for me looks like recognizing my anxiety and learning to set it aside, learning that it's not the truth. Because so many people are 6s mistyped because all these anxieties they have, they just see it as the truth. Like, I'm just a realist. I don't know what you're talking about. This isn't anxiety. I just know what's going on. I know what to worry about. But yeah, for me, this ability, especially since I've recognized that I'm a 6, this ability to say, oh, that's fear. Like, here's a great example of this. This was around the time that I was recognizing that I was a 6. I was invited to like a men's softball league thing, and I hadn't played baseball since high school. And so it had been like 20 something years. And I was driving out, it was like a 30-minute drive up north to this like complex. And I caught myself in the moment just spinning about it. Should I offer to pitch? Should I be in the outfield? Because most of these people who've never played baseball don't know how to catch a pop fly, and you're going to lose games if you're not. Should I do second base? Like, that's like what I used to play, but I think I could pitch this. Boom, 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 boom. And I was like, whoa, hold on. And I kind of, in that moment, recognized just what I was doing. And I remember thinking, what would I tell my clients or my coaching clients or my therapy clients right now? And just to breathe and be present with what is. And so I would just, as I was driving, I just kept bringing my attention back to my breath instead of all the thoughts. And what I noticed was this intense fear in my stomach that those thoughts were trying to kind of manage. And that fear in my stomach is what I was missing, right? The thoughts were going so quick to try to manage it. And I never even recognized that there was fear there. And so I think flourishing for me looks like recognizing that fear, breathing into that fear and saying, thank you, fear. I appreciate that. You're trying to help, but I don't need you right now, which brings out so much more of myself. And there's such a lightness and a freedom that I feel in those moments when I can really recognize my fear for what it is and recognize how it's affecting me, and being able to make decisions and live life and just hang out with my kids, being here in the moment versus instead of what are we going to do next, or what are we going to do this weekend, or are they upset with me for this, or what if I'm being a bad dad? Like all those thoughts, when I'm able to just be with them fully. I'm my best self. My kids get the best version of me. It's just, there's so much flourishing and freedom and lightness that comes when I'm able to really recognize my fear, and not try to get rid of it and shame it, but almost accept it. I heard this analogy for acceptance recently that I love. This guy said that accepting something isn't just fully taking it on and doing it all the time. It's also not rejecting it. Accepting something is like a vaccine, right? We take a little bit of the virus, we learn what it is, we accept it, our body learns how to deal with it. So if it comes in again, we know exactly how to deal with it. So acceptance isn't not doing the thing. Acceptance is getting to a place where the thing is no longer relevant. Does that make sense? So for me to accept my fear, breathe into it, and see it for what it is, it becomes irrelevant, right? That's not the truth. That doesn't have to be the case. There's so much more true than what this anxiety is telling me right now. Does that make sense? That idea of acceptance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which I love that. So when we've really accepted something, it becomes irrelevant. I think is a great way to kind of put that.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I love that. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Thank you.
So for those who want to learn more about your work, follow you more closely, where would you want to send them to? Yeah.
Either michaelshahan.com. It's my website. Have lots of blogs about the Enneagram and therapy, and my courses are on there. But I'm also my Instagram. My handle is michaelshahan_therapy. I do a lot of pretty regular posts. I'll do Enneagram memes or Instagram lives about random topics, or just knowledge or information or wisdom about the Enneagram, especially combined with therapy. Or also if you want to get on my email list, because I do a weekly email just talking about all these kinds of things. You can email my assistant at hello@michaelshahan.com, and she can get you on that list if that's something you're interested in as well.
Excellent. Yeah, everybody go follow Michael in all the places. Michael, I've really enjoyed this. I appreciate your insight, your wisdom. Thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, thanks, Evan.